know Rick while he was working in law enforcement?
He was a correction officer.
So we're clear he was a correctional officer. I'm deciding to f your life up. Rick, bro, I'm gonna f your life up. For fun. This a few times. This is not new. I do this all the time. There they go. Oh man, Ricky's crew. He said he got a $2 million crew in New York City. He was talking about the NYPD.
How do you feel about Bossa giving you the name Officer Ricky? I just want to hear it from you.
Baby, I'm worth too much money to even be, sidetracked on this carpet. No, this is not the G-Unit sneaker. Sorry. Listen, everybody over there at G-Unit, when y'all was out of business.
50 Cent has built a reputation as one of hip-hop's biggest trolls, and over the years, he's taken rap beef to a whole new level. From acting like a debt collector and demanding money from his own artists, to buying out 200 front-row seats at Ja Rule's show just to make the venue look empty, he's done it all.
I understand in October you did something to get back at Ja Rule.
Yeah.
And please tell the people what you did, because this is quite
I bought like the first 4 rows in his concert. How much are the tickets? $15. I said, okay, give me the first 4 rows.
How many seats is that? It's got to be like 200 seats.
But out of everyone who's clashed with the G-Unit general, no one probably regrets it more than Rick Ross.
You're really embarrassing him because this guy came out and it was I guess he started something. Yeah. So what you do is you come on and you go, I'm gonna f up your life, and, which is really gotta be unpleasant to hear.
Their feud kicked off after a run-in at the 2008 BET Awards. According to Ross, he didn't like the way 50 Cent looked at him that night, but 50 later claimed he didn't even remember Ross being there. What started as a petty misunderstanding quickly spiraled into one of hip-hop's longest and most brutal rap beefs. As the world watched, 50 Cent systematically tore down Rick Ross's career.
Officer Ricky! Why you got me up in this man? Is it because I said you and your mama look like the Clumps? Or is it because I said your baby mama's a girl?
By 2011, 50 Cent was reflecting on how the beef started, and to him, it was clear Ross wanted the smoke for the sake of publicity. He says it all started because I looked at him the wrong way, 50 said in an interview. That means he just wanted to compete. He wanted to move up. He wanted to create awareness for himself, and he did it. Whether Ross was clout chasing or genuinely had a problem with 50, their encounter at the 2008 BET Awards set things in motion. Ross wasted no time. He went straight to the studio and fired the first shot with his track Mafia Music. The song had plenty of slick talk, but one line stood out. Burn the house down, you gotta buy another. Don't forget the gas can. At first glance, it might sound like a typical rap flex, but that line had a deeper meaning. Ross was taking a direct shot at 50 Cent's baby mama, Shaniqua Tompkins, and the house fire that nearly took her and their sons' lives. At the time, 50 and Shaniqua were locked in a bitter custody battle over their son Marquise, as well as the house that mysteriously went up in flames. The fire was no joke. 6 people were inside when it broke out, and the place was completely destroyed. Shaniqua publicly accused 50 of being behind it, saying, "He's obsessed. He's very obsessed. We're in litigation. We're fighting." Over the house. He said he was going to have someone come off me and watch what he does. She even claimed she heard intruders right before the fire started.
Someone threw something through the window and the house just ignited. Couldn't even make it downstairs. We had to jump out the window.
Do you think he hired someone to do it?
Yes, of course. I know he's too much of a coward to do anything himself.
But 50's reps quickly shut down any suspicions, confirming that he was in Louisiana at the time of the incident. Regardless of what really happened, Rick Ross knew exactly what he was doing when he referenced the fire in his diss track. He had ammunition, and he was using it. Feeling himself, Ross made it clear in an interview that he wasn't holding back. "I had to address a few things. I had to address a few people," Ross said. "Some people are going to be effed, and that's the best way I can put it." At the time, Ross had every reason to be confident. His first 2 albums had already gone platinum, thanks to hits like Hustlin', and the industry had embraced him as a rising star. But Ross underestimated who he was going up against. 50 Cent wasn't just any rapper. He was a seasoned, battle-hardened troll who specialized in career destruction. Ross wasn't the first to step into the ring with 50. Just ask Ja Rule, Fat Joe, The Game, or any of the others who had clashed with him. None of them came out the same. And 50 made it clear he was going to wreck Ross's career just for fun.
I'm deciding to f your life up. Rick, I'm gonna f your life up. For fun. This a few times. This is not new. I do this all the time.
From the outside looking in, everyone could see the writing on the wall. If 50 got his hands on some dirt, it was over. Unfortunately for Rick Ross, he had a skeleton in his closet that was about to come crashing down. So where did the whole Rick Ross was a cop narrative even come from? To break that down, we have to rewind to 2006, when a bombshell article titled "Screw Rick Ross" started making the rounds on the Smoking Gun website. The article claimed that Rick Ross, real name William Leonard Roberts II, was actually a correctional officer before he ever picked up a mic. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was a photo of a young Rick Ross dressed in a full correctional officer uniform, proudly shaking hands as he graduated from the academy. The report went even further, stating that Ross worked as a CO at the South Florida Reception Center in Dade County. For a rapper who had built his entire brand around being the biggest boss, a drug kingpin, and a certified street legend, this revelation was a PR disaster, and Ross knew it. At first, he outright denied everything, going into full damage control mode with all kinds of explanations. One of the most bizarre claims was that hackers had photoshopped his face onto someone else's body. And that wasn't the only problem. While people were still debating whether Ross had worked as a CO, another issue started haunting him: his name. It's not uncommon for rappers to take inspiration from real-life gangsters when choosing stage names. We've seen it with artists like Nipsey Hussle, Yo Gotti, Bugsy Malone, and Machine Gun Kelly. But here's where Ross messed up. He didn't just borrow the name Rick Ross, he took it straight from a real, still living, and very much breathing ex-drug kingpin. And the real Rick Ross, aka Freeway Ricky Ross, was not happy about it.
Rick Ross used my whole name, you know, and he probably gained the most stardom out of everybody. You know, he raps about selling drugs,
Right.
And he never sold drugs. You know, he was a correctional officer.
Here's where things got even worse for Ross. If there's one thing you don't want to do in hip-hop, it's get into a beef with 50 Cent while having skeletons in your closet. Because 50 is like a shark who smells blood in the water. The moment Ross took that first shot with Mafia music, he unintentionally opened the floodgates for a world of pain. It went straight for the jugular, dropping Officer Ricky, Go Ahead, Try Me, a diss track that put Ross on blast for pretending to be a gangster when, in reality, he was a former law enforcement officer. But 50 didn't stop there. He took things to a whole new level, commissioning an entire animated cartoon series called Officer Ricky, where he relentlessly mocked Ross for his correctional officer past.
Officer Ricky! Why you got me up in this man? Is it because I said you and your mama look like the clumps? Or is it because I said your baby mama's a girl?
The series made sure that every time people heard the name Rick Ross, they'd immediately picture a badge, a uniform, and a CO standing in a prison. The worst part? It worked. As much as Ross tried to laugh it off, the Officer Ricky nickname started to stick. But with 50 Cent, going after the main target is never enough. He always drags everyone in their circle into the war. His beef with Rick Ross was no different. One key player who ended up helping 50 in his mission to tear Ross down was Tia Kemp, the mother of Ross's firstborn son. Wasting no time, 50 linked up with Tia for a full tell-all video where she sat down and completely aired out Ross's dirty laundry. She claimed everything about Ross was fake, from his tough guy persona to his so-called drug kingpin lifestyle. And as if that wasn't enough, Tia even spilled tea on Ross's other baby mamas, further fueling the drama.
As you listen to his raps, you would definitely believe him, but I mean, it was surprising that he would sit there and say he spends $200 a month on food. His jewelry is rented.
If I go where these other niggas can't go, $2 million worth of jewels on.
You know, possibly not real. His cars
With diss tracks, cartoons, and personal attacks all hitting at once, Ross found himself in the middle of a public relations nightmare. But despite 50's relentless campaign, Ross wasn't ready to back down. Barron, being the master troll that he is, saw an even bigger opportunity and announced that he would be publishing Tia Kemp's tell-all book about her time with Ross. Luckily, for Ross, that book never actually came out, but the damage had already been done. However, as strategic as it was for 50 to dig into Ross's past and involve his baby mama, this tactic eventually came back to bite him. While Tia Kemp was cool with exposing Ross, another one of Ross's baby mamas, Lastonia Leviston, ended, upturning the tables on 50. During the height of their beef, an intimate tape of Lastonia leaked online, and it just so happened to feature 50 providing commentary as his infamous Pimpin' Curly character. According to Leviston's lawsuit, 50 had illegally posted the video online, and she wasn't letting it slide. The lawsuit dragged on for years, but when it was finally settled, it had major consequences for 50. Even with the lawsuit looming over his head, 50 didn't slow down. He kept pressing Ross at every opportunity, throwing shots, keeping the Officer Ricky jokes alive, and constantly reminding people that Ross was a fraud. Ross, on the other hand, tried to play it cool. He'd still throw out the occasional diss track or subliminal message, but at this point, it was clear he was playing checkers while 50 was playing chess. To make matters worse, 50 took things to another level of disrespect when he took pictures with Rick Ross's son while out in Las Vegas with Tia Kemp and Floyd Mayweather. This was one of the lowest blows in the feud, and although many people felt 50 had gone too far, he never backed down. In interviews, he always brought it back to one key point: Rick Ross was a fraud. By this time, the Officer Ricky nickname wasn't just a joke in rap circles, it had become part of mainstream culture. 50 wasn't the first to discover Ross's law enforcement past, but he was the one who made sure the world knew about it. Beyond exposing him, the real victory for 50 was that he forced Ross to admit the truth. After years of dodging questions, denying the allegations, and spinning the story, Ross finally addressed it in 2014. On his track, Rich is Gangsta. From the album Mastermind, Ross rapped, "That's why I had to play the part. That wasn't me. It was a job."
Relatively easy, we could go to war. We could go to war.
For the first time in his career, Rick Ross had finally admitted what 50 Cent had spent over 5 years trying to expose. After that, Ross eventually came clean about the whole thing in interviews. At the end of the day, 50 had accomplished what he set out to do. He forced Ross to admit what the world had suspected for years. But the real question was, did it actually ruin Rick Ross's career the way 50 had planned? Let's be real. In hip-hop, the idea of a rapper being a cop or having any connection to law enforcement was practically unthinkable. It was the one thing you couldn't be if you wanted to be seen as a real street figure in the rap game. Yet, even after the big reveal, Ross still managed to keep his career afloat. So, did 50 really win? Although Ross took a hit in terms of credibility, it didn't completely destroy him the way people thought it would. Yeah, it was embarrassing. Yeah, he became the butt of countless jokes. And yeah, every time he talked about being a boss or pushing weight, there was always an asterisk next to his name. But despite all that, he kept going. Ross still had a strong fan base, and some people just didn't care about his past. They wanted good music. However, even though Ross continued dropping hits, there was something that couldn't be ignored. After he admitted the truth on Mastermind, his career wasn't quite the same. Before the beef, he was dominating the charts, dropping platinum records, and sitting at the top of the game. But after Mastermind, Ross never hit #1 on the Billboard charts again. When he dropped his next album, Hood Billionaire, it marked the lowest first-week sales of his career at that time. For 50 Cent, the beef was a win, but it came with setbacks. The biggest blow came in 2015 when a court ordered him to pay $5 million to Lastonia Leviston for leaking her tape. The lawsuit hit 50 so hard that he had to file for bankruptcy, something people still don't let him live down. Even though 50 tried to countersue Ross, claiming he was responsible for the leak, the lawsuit stood, and 50 had to take that L. Still, Ross managed to regain some control of the narrative. He began speaking openly about being a CO, often spinning it as if he had an ulterior motive for taking the job. Yet the beef never fully died. Even today, Ross seems a little salty about the whole thing. Just look at how quickly he clapped back when Charlemagne the God called 50 a diabolical genius.
Thinking the way I think of Charlemagne, he would know better than that. A diabolical genius doesn't file foreclosure, doesn't file bankruptcy, it's not a diabolical genius.
Ross tried to flip the script by pointing out 50 Cent's flaws, but all he got in return was a reminder of how he got exposed. While Rick Ross is still a successful rapper and businessman, despite a dip in album sales, what 50 Cent did was create a permanent stain on his career. Anytime someone mentions Rick Ross, they can't ignore the Officer Ricky saga. No matter how much Ross acts like it doesn't matter, it's part of his legacy now. Just when it seemed like the long-standing feud between 50 Cent and Rick Ross was cooling off, the two found a new reason to clash, this time over Big Meech. For those who don't know, Demetrius Big Meech Flenory is one of the most infamous figures in hip-hop's connection to the drug game. He co-founded the Black Mafia family, BMF, a massive drug trafficking and money laundering operation that left its mark on hip-hop culture. After spending years behind bars, Big Meech was recently released to a halfway house, and naturally, many big names in the industry visited him, including 50 Cent. But when Meech linked up with Rick Ross, things took a turn. To understand why this caused so much tension, you have to remember that 50 Cent has a direct connection to BMF. He's the executive producer of the hit Starz TV series, BMF, which is loosely based on the real-life story of the Black Mafia family, chronicling the exploits of Big Meech and his younger brother, Terry Southwest T. Flenory. The show even stars Meech's real-life son, Demetrius Flenory Jr., as his father. In 50's mind, seeing Big Meech spend time with his biggest rap enemy probably felt like a betrayal. And if there's one thing about 50 Cent, it's that he doesn't let things like this slide. It didn't take long before 50 jumped on Instagram to air his frustration. He posted, and later deleted, a picture of a rat, along with some not-so-subtle references to Rick Ross's 2010 song, BMF, Blowin' Money Fast.
Rick Ross and Big Meech do an Instagram video together because Big Meech is doing this big concert. And so then 50 gets upset about that. Did 50 post anything, or did he just kind of, unfollow Lil Meech?
Well, he posted a...
Instead of brushing it off, Ross decided to hit back with a video response. He mocked 50 Cent's BMF series, calling it lackluster and small budget. But Ross didn't stop there. He boldly claimed he was going to produce his own BMF movie, saying, "I want to do a BMF film because you've been entertained by a lackluster, small budget series. Now it's time to do a big budget film."
Yeah. So look, I do want to do a BMF film because you've been entertained by a lackluster, small budget series. Now it's time to do a big budget film.
At this point, it's safe to say that 50 Cent and Rick Ross will never be cool. Their beef has spanned years, and neither side shows any signs of backing down. Despite the hits Ross took during their feud, he's managed to maintain a successful career. Still, the Officer Ricky saga is a permanent stain on his legacy, thanks to 50's relentless trolling and exposure of his past. If there's one lesson rappers should take away from this feud, it's this. If you're going to beef with 50 Cent, make sure you don't have any deep, dark secrets lurking in your past. Because if you do, he will find them, and by the time he's done with you, that secret might just be the first thing people think of when they hear your name.